Welcome to episode 12 of Channel Legendarium. Today we'll be covering the Russian version of Santa Claus, commonly called Jack Frost in the English-speaking world. We'll be covering Jack Frost's evolution from a pre-Christian god of winter to a kindly gift giver during the Christian era. And to help us better understand how the Russians see Jack Frost, we'll look at a fairy tale which stars none other than the god of winter himself. Now, Jack Frost has lived for more than 2,000 years. First, he was a pre-Christian deity named Morozka, who was an unforgiving and cruel god of winter and ice and snow, and he was married to none other than winter itself. With his ice storms, he could freeze persons, villages, even whole invading armies and landscapes if he chose to do so. And the only hope for the poor Russian peasants was to appease Morozka with gifts of grain and barn animals in the hopes that he wouldn't freeze them to death. Now, in the 10th century AD, the Grand Prince Vladimir sent out riders to seek out the best religion in the world, as he put it. The riders traveled to Islamic countries, to Jewish countries, and finally to the Eastern Roman Empire, which was an Eastern Orthodox country. And when they returned, they told the Grand Prince that when they saw the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in the Eastern Orthodox world, they were so taken by its beauty that they didn't know if they were in heaven or earth. And so it was, according to legend, the Grand Prince Vladimir had himself baptized. After his men were baptized, he gathered up all of the wooden idols that the Russians once worshipped and threw them into the river Volga. However, one of those idols wouldn't quite stay under the water, and that gave the Russian Orthodox Church a little trouble. Like many Christian churches across Europe, they had the problem of getting people not just to worship God, the Christian God, in their churches, but to get them to stop praying to pagan deities whenever the priest wasn't around. So rather than try to wipe out the worship of Morozka, they reinvented him as Ded Moroz, a kindly figure who would travel the Russian countryside in a sledge pulled by 3 white horses who represented the Holy Trinity. And instead of being married to Winter, to give him a more good-hearted patriarchal appearance, they gave him a granddaughter named Morozka. And together, they gave presents of fruit and nuts to all of the good children across Russia. Of course, if you were naughty, he might just send you a blizzard. And that is what leads us into the fairy tale, which tells us much about how the Russians see Grandfather Frost, or Ded Moroz. It starts off in a village, of course. A good-hearted but weak-willed man's wife has died. He still has a young daughter named Nastinka and decides that she needs a mother just as he needs a wife. But since this is a fairy tale, he marries your standard issue evil stepmother who comes complete with her own wicked stepdaughter named Morozka. Morozka is allowed to lounge around and be lazy and rude and disrespect all of the grown-ups and faces no consequences for this. Of course, this will come back to haunt Morozka. Meanwhile, the good-hearted Nastinka is forced to wear rags and do all of the chores around the farm, much like a Russian counterpart to Cinderella. However, this wicked stepmother isn't content with simply making her stepdaughter's life hard. She flat out decides to murder her. And so the wicked stepmother proceeds to nag and nag and nag the good-hearted but weak-willed husband until he agrees to leave Nastinka in the forest to be frozen to death in the next blizzard. After Nastinka is dropped off by her father in the forest, she encounters Grandfather Frost. Grandfather Frost asks Nastinka why she is out here alone and so cold, and if she needs any help. Nastinka, being a polite girl, does not want to impose and insists that all is well. However, Grandfather Frost can see her plight and is moved by her politeness. So he gives her a chest of gold and jewels and sends her back to the village in a beautiful white dress. The wicked stepmother, up until then, had been gloating about how Nastinka would soon be frozen to death. However, the family dog warned her, and apparently he can talk, by the way, that Nastinka would in fact be coming back in glory. And just as the wicked stepmother finished beating the dog, Nastinka returned to the village in that shining white dress and with a chest full of gold which she dutifully gave to her father. Of course, the wicked stepmother went mad with envy that Nastinka had all of these wonderful riches in this dress, while her daughter was still dressed in a peasant gown. So she sent out her own daughter, Morozka, into the forest to meet Grandfather Frost. And Morozka, being a very rude and disrespectful girl, when she saw Grandfather Frost in the woods, went up to him and demanded a dress, and demanded riches. Grandfather Frost said, "So you want gifts, eh? Well, here's the most powerful gift of all." Back in the village, the wicked stepmother is gloating about how her daughter's going to be coming back in glory, and once again the family dog warns her, "You know, your daughter's probably dead already because Grandfather Frost sent her a blizzard." The wicked stepmother proceeds to beat the dog once more, but when the father goes out to retrieve the stepdaughter Morozka, he finds that she is frozen, as stiff and dead as a board. The wicked stepmother is crushed, and the good father retakes control of the family, and everything is okay. And that wraps things up for this episode of the Channel Legendarium. We'll be doing at least one more Christmas episode before the season wraps up. I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed what you see, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, please leave it in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and a happy holiday to you and yours.